The war in Ukraine, which was once supposed to be a swift victory for Putin, has become his greatest nightmare. His military has been drained, his economy has been crippled, and his allies are beginning to question his leadership. From the beginning, Putin sold the war as a mission to protect Russia's future, but now it's clear that this war has instead destroyed Russia's image, resources, and future stability. Ukrainian forces, backed by Western technology and intelligence, continue to strike deep into Russian territory, bringing the war closer and closer to Moscow. Each attack sends shockwaves through the Kremlin, and with every passing day, Putin's fear grows more visible. Recently, videos have circulated online showing Putin making unusually emotional and pleading remarks in public. Gone is the cold, calculated tone that once defined him. Instead, he appears nervous and unsure, his voice cracking as he speaks to a dwindling audience of loyalists. Some analysts have described it as a man realizing that his empire is slipping through his fingers. The once untouchable strongman is now begging for support from his own people, from his dwindling list of allies, and even from nations he once mocked or threatened. It's a stunning fall from grace, and it has everyone asking, is this karma in action? Over the years, Putin built his reputation on fear and control. He silenced critics, crushed opposition, and manipulated elections to maintain his grip on power. But power built on intimidation rarely lasts forever. As history shows, every ruler who governs through fear eventually becomes a prisoner of it. Putin's current situation reflects that perfectly. He is now surrounded by paranoia, unsure whom to trust. Reports suggest that even within the Kremlin, many of his closest allies are distancing themselves, afraid of being pulled down with him. His top generals have either been dismissed, disappeared, or mysteriously died, a pattern that has only fueled speculation that Putin is losing control not just of the war, but of his inner circle too. The sanctions imposed by the West have bitten deeply into Russia's economy. Factories have slowed down, the ruble has fallen to historic lows, and inflation has driven prices through the roof. Ordinary Russians, who were once told that their sacrifices were for a noble cause, are now beginning to realize that they were deceived. The promise of a stronger Russia has turned into the reality of a struggling nation. Lines at grocery stores grow longer, jobs are vanishing, and the younger generation is fleeing the country in record numbers. This is not the Russia that Putin promised. This is a country on the edge of collapse. Putin's recent public appearances show a man under immense pressure. His face appears swollen, his movements less confident, and his speeches filled with contradictions. Gone are the confident smiles and bold declarations. In their place are pleas for unity and desperate calls for patriotism, but the people are no longer listening. Even Russian state media, once completely under his thumb, has shown subtle signs of dissent. Small cracks are appearing in the propaganda machine, as journalists and commentators begin to question whether the endless war is worth the suffering it has brought upon the nation. Internationally, Putin's isolation is becoming more apparent than ever. Countries that once stood by him, such as China and North Korea, are now keeping their distance. Even his so-called friends see him as a liability. Russia's diplomatic reputation has hit rock bottom, with many nations cutting ties, reducing trade, or openly condemning Moscow's actions. Putin's attempts to beg for support on the global stage have mostly been met with silence or polite rejection. The image of Putin as a powerful global player has been replaced by that of a desperate man grasping for relevance. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to make significant gains on the battlefield. Precision strikes have crippled Russian infrastructure, and advanced Western weapons have given Kiev a strong upper hand. Ukrainian drones and missiles are now hitting targets deep inside Russian territory, something unthinkable just a year ago. Every explosion inside Russia is a symbolic message. Putin cannot protect his people, and his so-called special operation has backfired completely. This is not just a military failure. It's a personal humiliation for a man who built his entire legacy around the idea of strength and control. Behind the scenes, insiders describe growing panic within the Kremlin. There are whispers of disagreements, secret meetings, and even discussions about Putin's possible replacement. The fear of a coup or rebellion has never been greater. Security around Moscow has been tightened, and reports suggest that Putin rarely spends nights in the same location twice. The once confident ruler now lives in fear of betrayal, a man trapped in the empire he built. This paranoia is not new for autocrats, but for Putin, it's a sign that his time may be running out. Observers say this may be the ultimate example of political karma. For years, Putin has brought suffering and chaos to others, from Ukraine to Syria, from Europe to his own people. Now, that same chaos is coming back to haunt him. The economic ruin, the military defeats, the international isolation, they are all consequences of his own choices. Even those who once admired his strongman image are beginning to realize that his leadership has brought nothing but ruin. The mask of power has slipped, revealing a man desperate to cling to what little authority he has left. The situation in Russia is becoming more unpredictable by the day. Protests, once crushed instantly, are starting to appear again, though smaller and quieter than before. People are whispering their anger instead of shouting it, but the discontent is spreading fast. The Russian elite, who have grown rich under Putin's rule, are now moving their money abroad, buying properties in Dubai and Turkey, and preparing for a post-Putin era. This quiet exodus is a clear sign that the inner circle is losing faith. Meanwhile, Putin's televised appearances continue to reveal his growing desperation. His speeches are filled with exaggerated claims of victory and delusional optimism, but his tone betrays him. His hands tremble slightly, his eyes dart nervously, and his fake smiles fail to hide his fear. Every time he appears in public, analysts dissect his body language, searching for signs of weakness, and lately, they're finding plenty. Even loyal supporters are beginning to sense that their leader is not as confident as he once was. Karma often arrives quietly, but when it hits hard. The very arrogance that once defined Putin has now become his downfall. His refusal to listen to advisors, his obsession with control, and his belief in his own infallibility have all combined to bring him to this point. The man who once thought he could reshape the world order now struggles to keep his own country from collapsing. His political future looks uncertain, and the cracks in his leadership are widening every day. There's also a psychological dimension to this crisis. Putin has always seen himself as a historic figure, the man destined to restore Russia's greatness. But now, he's being remembered for something very different: destruction, failure, and fear. His legacy is turning to dust before his eyes, and that realization may be the hardest blow of all. Watching him beg in public, pleading for loyalty and support, feels like the ultimate reversal of fortune. The same man who forced others to kneel is now forced to plead for mercy from his own people. In recent weeks, Russian state television has broadcast emotional speeches from Putin, trying to rally the public around him. But the more he speaks, the weaker he seems. His words no longer inspire, they only expose his fear. It's a tragic irony that after decades of silencing opposition, the only voice left for him to hear is his own, trembling, uncertain, and empty. Experts believe that if this downward spiral continues, we may be witnessing the final chapter of Putin's rule. The war that was supposed to secure his legacy might instead destroy it completely. The economy will continue to bleed, the military will weaken further, and public anger will grow. Russia's future looks uncertain, but one thing is becoming clear: the Putin era is fading fast. For many around the world, this moment feels like long-awaited justice. The countless lives lost, the families torn apart, the suffering unleashed, all of it was driven by Putin's ambitions. Now, as he faces the consequences of his actions, many believe that this is the universe balancing the scales. The same power he used to intimidate others has turned against him. Putin's downfall, whether slow or sudden, will mark a turning point in global politics. His once powerful image has already been reduced to that of a desperate, isolated man, trying to hold on to power as the walls close in. The empire he built on lies, fear, and propaganda is beginning to crumble from within. And as the world watches, it becomes clear that no amount of begging or denial can reverse the tide of karma that has finally come for him. The truth is, every action has consequences. For years, Putin acted as though he were above that rule, untouchable, unstoppable, immune to repercussions. But history always catches up. Today, we see him not as the master of Russia, but as a man consumed by his own creation. Fear, deception, and arrogance have led him exactly where he never wanted to be, begging for help, stripped of dignity, exposed before the world. This is the reality of Vladimir Putin's present, a story of power turned to panic, of arrogance turned to fear, and of a ruler finally facing the consequences of his own deeds. The world may not know how or when his rule will end, but one thing is certain. The image of Putin as an unshakable leader is gone forever. What remains is a broken man, left to face the very forces he once unleashed on others. And perhaps that is the purest form of karma. The same energy you send out into the world eventually comes back to you, multiplied. For Putin, it has returned with full force. His empire trembles, his people lose faith, and his power fades into history. The man who thought he could control everything is now at the mercy of his own actions. And as the curtain slowly closes on his era, one can only say this is what happens when power, lies, and pride finally meet their reckoning.